Good morning. I'm Robert Peterson with AWS Marketplace. I'd like to thank you for attending this session. We have two speakers as well. I'll be introducing them later. So you're already familiar with AWS services such as EC2, Redshift, and S3. But did you know there's over 1,100 products our partners have that are available on Marketplace? 24 different categories, and they're easily deployable for your AWS solutions. So we're going to walk through 5 examples of how customers have easily incorporated these applications into their overall AWS cloud solution. 2 of our customers, JavaLine and Second Watch, have agreed to come up and talk about their solutions and how they use software found on Marketplace. We'll have time at the end for you to ask them some questions as well. So let's first talk about what customers have been asking for. So customers have told us they want to be able to find and use software they're already familiar with, plus be able to easily discover new software, knowing that it's tested and it's going to work as described. Now, AWS allows you to implement and scale solutions quickly, so finding and deploying software should be just as easy. And often, customers are not quite sure about the exact product or edition that they want to use, so finding what that software is on Marketplace and being able to quickly evaluate and deploy it is another thing they're asking for. And then finally, AWS is a utility model. Being able to scale up or down, paying for just what you use. So using software products on AWS should be the same. So this is what customers are actually saying. It's easy to set up and use, works right out of the box. It's fast support, it's up and running in 90 seconds. And so these customers are able to find, review, and deploy their software, often with just one click. And we'll give an example, or give a demo of that. Now, these products have simple pricing. It's very straightforward. The licensing is included. And so it's easy to track which software that you're subscribed to. So let me take you through a real quick demo of Marketplace. How many here are familiar with Marketplace at all? Raise your hands. Anyone? Very good. So now, there's 24 categories here of software. So let's look at, obviously there's a lot of OS software here. So let's say we go to monitoring. We choose one of these products. So as you can see, all these products are displayed very similar. You can just see the highlights, what they do. You can see what regions they're available in, as well as the instance size. Now, our partners already know what the best instances to run their software on, so this is pre-selected for you. You can figure out what version. Now, if you go a little further, you can see that there's reviews, there's support details, or resources. So pretty much what you need to know to quickly determine and evaluate a software solution. Now, it's easy to deploy. You can either launch through an EC2 console, or you can actually one-click launch. You can select the instance type. Now, you'll see that estimated monthly charges here change a little depending on what you choose. Now, you can accept the terms and deploy with one click, and then it will start running and deploying. You can go to your software, and you can see all the different software that you're subscribed to. And we can come back to this and see the software deployed. Now, another thing that we launched just this week is the EC2 console integration. So in your EC2 dashboard, if you wanted to launch an instance, you can see that there's a lot of different OS choices. If you go to AWS Marketplace, you can see very similar, the same set of categories. So if you choose business intelligence, for example, you can see some software choices here. And then it's a very similar process where you can select, you can see the details of the product, and you can continue. You can choose an instance, and then review and launch. Very similar as the Marketplace. So, now that we've seen how fast and easy it is to deploy the software, we're going to show you how 5 different customers have used software from Marketplace. I'd first like to talk about Jobberline. They're a Kirkland-based company. They launched in the summer of 2013, and they have an interesting service. They allow people applying for hourly jobs to do so from a computer, a tablet, or a phone. And the interesting thing is it doesn't need to be a smartphone. So that whole digital divide that sometimes prevents people from getting jobs isn't a case here. Now, when they launched, they had very, very high traffic. And they initially deployed a single node MongoDB, and they needed more. So they went through Marketplace, and they were able to deploy quickly a very much more complex MongoDB solution. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Mickey. He's a co-founder of Jobberline, and he agreed to come up and explain a little bit more.
Good morning. Hi, thank you. My name is Mickey Mueller, VP of Product at Jobberline. As Robert said correctly, we launched a new solution in the Marketplace that allows hourly workers to find jobs more easily and get those more easily. And the way to do it is we actually digitize the entire interview process. So unlike sending a resume over a job board, our system conducts interviews on the screen, conducts interviews over a phone, and puts all that together into a rich profile that we then show the employers. And the key for us was to have those interviews customized. So employers can choose any variations of questions and any combination, and it just works, which required that we use something other than SQL server because those profiles are a little bit different, each one from another, and we went with MongoDB. Because it's document-based, it's NoSQL, schema is very flexible. When we started, we deployed our own. We basically downloaded it from 10gen, the vendor's website. We installed an instance, and we launched our beta. And before we know it, the traffic went up. We went up to 100, 150 concurrent users at any point in time, which created load and created risk for us because we were not sure about our installation of Mongo. We were not sure that we had it all properly configured. We didn't have failover. And we had 10,000 other things we were doing at the same time. So for our small team back then to focus on our energy on MongoDB best practices was something that we couldn't afford time-wise. So originally, we went to the vendor, 10gen, and we said, well, we want to buy some time. Get your experts in here and help us set it up and fine-tune it and make sure that it's all properly configured. And we had to wait 2 months in line to get their team in. It would cost us probably $10,000, $15,000, all for that peace of mind that our core of our system is properly configured. So then the alternative was, let's go to the Marketplace. And what's not very clear about the Marketplace is that it's not just you getting software there that's quickly installed and everything just works, but it's also fine-tuned for the AWS environment. So in our case, the EBS volumes were properly configured. The IOPS was properly configured. We had this peace of mind that we just use that image and it will just work. And we had to create a replica set to make sure that we have failover, and again, it came with the installation. So literally, we replaced a week of work with 10gen that would cost us $10,000, $15,000 with one click. In the 3 months since then, we were running in 3 cities. We got over 180,000 profiles built in Mongo. And in our case, it happens in peaks. So it's not throughout the day. It happens in the afternoon. So all of a sudden, you get hundreds of people just hitting that database at the same time. No hiccups, 3 or 4 months, no downtime, just works. And for us, it's a huge peace of mind. A small startup, we cannot afford this big team, DevOps, to take care of this thing. So it's literally a lifesaver. The other things we did, as we're looking at what else can we leverage with AWS to help our cause, A big part of what we do is phone interviews. So we use a company called Twilio to conduct phone interviews for us. It's a third party that I think also runs on AWS. And then they provide us with the voice clips of people who interview themselves over the phone for different jobs. And we needed to, a way to, in a scalable way, let employers, our customers, hear those voice clips. And so what we've done is we use the S3 buckets as a public repository that we can then direct the browser on the other end to just download those clips directly, not even going through us. And then on top of it, you put a CDN on, in front of it, and all of a sudden, we're able to manage, right now, I think it's about 300,000 minutes of voice clips. If we had to build our own repository and storage and distribution, it's a big project, and again, it's hard to scale. So between those two in our MySQL instance, which we use RDS for, again, same reason, no management, no overhead of having to set it up and worry about the things we don't want to worry about. Our entire storage story has been really a non-event for us. Anything else you want to go through?
Thanks for sharing that. So if you, we can see on the slide that you went from a single node. Can you explain how you determined you needed to go through multiple clusters and how that helped you scale in terms of how much time that took to deploy?
So we had an engineer sitting on this for a couple of days trying to figure out the details of how you deploy a cluster. And why you needed the cluster? You need it because if something breaks, then, you know, because MongoDB is not that documented. It's new technology. We didn't know what's going to break, if it's going to break. We needed failover. The failover came in a way of two secondary nodes that gives us not only failover, but also we can read from those nodes as opposed from the primary nodes. That gives us scale. So we can throw in more secondary nodes into this cluster, and MongoDB just takes care of replication of the data across these nodes if it's properly configured. And that's really the key for us was, again, how do we get binaries that we know already configured and optimized to work in this cluster without having to invest days or hours or buy professional services time. It's something that if you're a startup like us, if something like this fails, you know, it's probably death in that minute. You can't recover. There's too much traffic coming your way. The brand damage could be a disaster. So it's one of those things, as a startup, we're not an IT shop, we're a consumer website. You cannot afford to even risk those things. So to us, be able to do this without having to even think about it was absolutely lifesaver.
So two follow-up questions. One, as you continue to grow, how would you imagine that you will extend MongoDB, if I can ask that?
Oh, we can easily add more of these secondary nodes. All we got to do is launch more of this instance and throw in more of these. Our app nodes to go to the secondary nodes to get data. So you can easily make this a 10 nodes cluster, almost by just clicking on the console. But to be quite honest, Mongo is so efficient. You know, even with the low we are now, the CPU is not even moving. It's ridiculously efficient. It's not your SQL database. But we know we can scale, so we have a solution. More like this, and you know, before you do it, you scale 10 times.
So it sounds like you've learned quite a bit. What best practices or advice would you give to either customers who are thinking about deploying something similar that could have either rapid growth or a periodic spike, or in general, using AWS services or Marketplace?
Well, start with the Marketplace because it gives you the ability to test. And you're testing something that's production grade. So if it works out, like in our case, it worked out so well, we couldn't stop and say, okay, now let's do a production grade installation instead of it. The Marketplace is more than just a place to test software. This is your production grade, and you run it in, you can run it in a small scale, so it doesn't cost you a lot of money. But you know, build on top of it. The other thing we learned is that you could customize the instances. So if you go to the 10 Gen MongoDB instance, you don't have to take what they're offering in terms of instance size, and you can still take the advantage of using the optimized, pre-configured instances. And that's what we did. We started smaller, and we increased it then later. Again, it gives us the flexibility, but mostly gives us the peace of mind. One less thing to worry about.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mickey.
Okay.
So our next customer is Second Watch. Now, Second Watch is a leading cloud SI, and they're an AWS Premier Consulting Partner. And Travis, our senior cloud architect, he's going to be joining us. Now, Second Watch was working with Adobe, and they needed an application delivery platform. And they needed to determine what type of software they should use, from what vendor, and really what kind of configuration and version they should do. So they used Marketplace to quickly iterate and test and evaluate a solution that would work for Adobe. And so this complicated deployment basically is the process that they went through. So I'd like to invite Travis to come up and talk a little about the experience they had with Adobe.
Hi guys, I'm Travis Greenstreet, Senior Cloud Architect for Second Watch. And yes, we had a really interesting scenario here, and it was one of our first times using Marketplace. So we have a full professional services division. We're no strangers to creating our own servers, using whatever software is out there and deploying it ourselves. It's almost a point of pride. You know, if we have to just use off-the-shelf software with one click, what kind of job are we going to be facing in our future? So this guy's kind of trying to push us out of a job, but the benefits and the upside for our clients are massive, and it allows us to deliver far more in fewer hours. So in the Adobe case, they have a huge, their Business Catalyst platform, a very massive hosting solution. This is 700,000 plus websites across 3 continents, and they wanted to effectively get rid of those data centers. So they had data centers in Australia, North America, and Ireland. So we, because of the complexity of the site, we had to do this in a phased migration approach. So we put the load balancers and part of their application stack in AWS, and then we were actually passing traffic through the load balancers back to their physical data centers, and we were slowly moving parts of this application stack up behind the scenes. So they had a physical load balancer in each location, and they use these load balancers in a very, very, very detailed fashion. So they're not just load balancing, passing traffic between servers. They're doing a ton of header rewrites. They're load balancing UDP because they're running their own DNS behind the scenes. And for those reasons, we couldn't just go ahead and use elastic load balancers. They don't support a lot of that functionality. So we used the virtual edition of the physical load balancer that they had deployed on-prem because we didn't want to go through and rewrite all the regex expressions. We soon realized that the virtual edition of the load balancer that they had on-prem was not up to the task of handling this much traffic. It was crashing, losing its entire network stack. It was a it put us in a very tough position. The client's certainly unhappy. This is semi-production, and then if those load balancers are going down and they're not able to reverse proxy back into the original physical locations, then there's big problems. So we were able to jump over and immediately deploy some Citrix Netscalers into their AWS environments. Thank you. And could quickly start testing to make sure that, yes, these could handle the load. These could, we started writing the regex expressions that would match their previous rule set for their physical appliances. And what was fantastic about the whole process is to get load balancers working properly, configured, deployed. It used to take quite a long time. And for us to be able to, with one click, spin up a series of Netscalers, develop against them, test them, And then not only that, licensing and support was already baked in. So within an hour of us launching these, starting to write the new expressions on these Netscalers, we were able to get Citrix on the phone, and they're fully supporting these load balancers, helping us translate the previous rule set to the regex Netscaler supported style. And then not only that, we didn't have to really worry about what level of Netscaler are we getting. Are we getting Platinum? Do we need the standard, basic, 10 megabit, 100 megabit? We could just deploy something out there that was probably over-provisioned just to handle the immediate load. And later on, we could export those configurations of the Netscalers and bring them back down to a baseline, a nice, easy kind of solution to that, to the kind of rapid growth or over-provisioning. We could quickly deploy smaller ones, swap the elastic IPs over to those, and they, we'd already proven out that, yes, this sysconfig works fully, it's load tested, and we were able to get them back up and running very quickly. So it was a huge kind of success for us, from going from certainly a bad situation where production's impacted to within a day or two, we were able to have everything fully cut over to those Netscalers. So it was a pretty impressive solution. And not only that, I mean, what's great about using these marketplace images, and as Mickey referred to earlier, is they're tuned for the environment by usually the people that are most familiar with that product. So in the case of MongoDB or in the case of Citrix Netscalers, we're not having to worry about, we don't have to worry about configuring these Netscalers in a certain specific fashion. They're coming out of the box well tuned to the environment. And then we've used a lot of other marketplace components since then. And what's, again, fantastic about that, we have a very large professional services organization and then a large managed services organization. And as you guys know, no two engineers will configure the same server the same way. Even though they're all kind of following best practices, you might come up with some automation scripts to install Gluster or whatever it may be. But they're always going to have deltas. And then how do you have other engineers seamlessly translate into those environments, kind of reverse engineer what the first engineer did, understand exactly how this is configured, and they might have their own preferences and go, I wouldn't have done it this way. You get a very, very uniform deployment method here that any managed service guy can come in, pick up, and it's uniform, it's repeatable, it's something they're already familiar with. The config files are in the same location, all the performance tuning is identical. So it just allows us to kind of use these, the AWS is always kind of compared to the Lego land. You get all these pieces, they fit seamlessly together. Marketplace allows kind of those custom injection molded pieces to be added on by any third party, and they'll still click right into your AWS environment. You can kind of build off that Legoland concept with a much larger set of pieces than before. So it's kind of like the Mindstorm addition to your previous simple Legoland blocks. Let's see here. So you can see that after we had the Platinum up for a bit, realized that it was overkill and we didn't need some of those features, we were able to, again, just dump those configs out from those Netscalers, put the standard in place, upload the configuration, all the rules, et cetera, that we rewrote for the Netscalers onto the standard boxes, and then just flip IPs. I mean, it was extremely easy, and it's some of those things that, even though I work in the environment every day, it still kind of feels like magic when you're able to deploy things so quickly, fail over IPs from one load balancer to the other, and there's no impact on production. It's just pretty unreal. So it's certainly made us a bigger fan of Marketplace. We've used things like Qualys penetration testing, kind of appliances, vulnerability scanning. And again, we're just able to launch those, scan an environment, shut them down, and we only pay for what we use. So it's certainly a much easier process to provision and put in place these resources. And again, you're free to make errors as well. You can launch all kinds of different instances, and it might have cost you $3, but you've proven out that potential theory, and people can, you can spend a lot of engineering resources discussing the same, whiteboarding. Everybody's got their own idea, and oh, maybe this won't work, maybe that won't work. Heck, spend an hour, launch that instance, prove out your theory, and then you can move on with the discussion. So it's really just a fantastic addition to the whole AWS ecosystem. I'm jumping ahead to slides that are not mine.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Travis. So both Mickey and Travis will come back up to answer questions on the end. So let's see a few other examples of how customers have used Marketplace. One of the more interesting ones is the University of Liège. Now, they're based in Belgium. They do a lot of brain research, including Parkinson's. So they use MRI images, and then they need to basically do analysis on that to understand where Parkinson's can occur. Now, this is a very computationally intensive process. And they were using, basically, they had some PCs on campus, and they would cluster them together and try to run those analysis jobs, and it would take 2 to 3 weeks. And sometimes those jobs would fail, and then all of a sudden there would be delays for the researchers. So what they did is they went to AWS Marketplace, and they were able to find NITRC there. It runs for free on top of the EC2. And they were able to dynamically scale up and run these jobs in what took weeks, then took days, about 85% time savings. And so if you're interested, as I was, as to what that actually does, this NITRC is a neuroimaging analyzer. And so what this does is this actually shows here the brain, the neuron connections in the brain. And this is a side view. And so the colors are basically the orientation of the connections in your brain. So at the very top here, in the red, that is actually the connection between the two hemispheres of the brain. And then what they do is they then look for what basically is early cell death that leads to Parkinson's. And so this research was able to go forward, and they were able to do their analysis in just a matter of days versus weeks. And again, when the job was done, they were able to scale down until the next time they needed it. The next customer, Sage, is kind of interesting. Now, they're an executive recruiting firm, and they're very data-driven. And that's kind of the way that they go around doing business. And they were looking for a BI tool that would help them manage all this data. And the BI solutions they were looking for were running at around $60,000 for a license. Now, they wanted to use their capital. Maybe a microphone. Are we good? All right, thanks. All right. So they were looking for a BI license. It was running $60,000. So they wanted to use that capital for something else to grow their business. So they went to Marketplace. They were familiar with Jaspersoft, which is a BI tool that's available, and it runs for as little as 40 cents an hour. Now, they were able to scale that up really, really fast, and they were able to use it on demand, and now they're basically running their business for a few $100s a month. Now, because of this, they were able to incorporate this into how they do business and actually became part of the pitch to customers and clients. And it was so successful, they were able to double their revenue, their monthly revenue, due to this. And finally, our last customer example is Hadel. Now, they do a question and answer board solution for companies. And then the customers or the employees can find the best answers to the questions and accelerate their business decision making. Now, they needed a way to keep their customer data safe. So they went through AWS Marketplace. They were able to quickly evaluate what security products they needed and quickly evaluate and deploy them. And so they were very happy that the on-demand pricing at $300 a month fit their budget and fit their needs. And so Joel, their CEO, basically calls AWS Marketplace, their startup's best friend, because they can grow and scale as needed. And when they find that they need a new solution, they can quickly find one in Marketplace. So with these 5 examples, you can see how all types of organizations have used Marketplace to quickly find and deploy software, from databases application delivery, computing platforms, BI, and security. These are just some of the solutions that are available on Marketplace through our ecosystem partners. So we have 24 categories, as you probably saw in our demo. There's 1,100 product listings. You can quickly evaluate and see them deploy with one click. Now, Travis and Mickey talked about this a little. The Marketplace team tests and evaluates all the products before they get listed on Marketplace. And all the products have consistent, simple pricing. The licensing is included. And it's easy to track the software that you subscribe to. Since you use your AWS account to purchase the software, any charges are integrated into your single AWS bill. So it makes it very, very easy. So some takeaways from our customer examples. JavaLine, now they benefited from the integration and the speed and scalability. Second Watch and Adobe were able to easily test and evaluate different versions of the software. And Liege was able to quickly scale up a familiar software. And Sage, they benefited from the utility pay-by-the-hour nature their BI solution offered. And then Hadel was able to quickly find and deploy a security solution.